I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Forgotten Oscar Films. A couple days ago, we had the Terrence Malick video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. But today, on this episode of Forgotten Oscar Films, we're going to be looking at our very first Best Picture winner for the 1980 class of movies, finishing off sort of the 80s decade. We're going to be talking about Robert Redford's Ordinary People. So, if you're new to the series, what we do every single week is a look at a film that was nominated for Best Picture, didn't have to win it, but was nominated for Best Picture, starting with the year 1988 and working backwards. And the movie I choose is always a movie either I've never heard of, or maybe hasn't gotten enough critical recognition that some of the other movies did. Oftentimes, the Oscars are sort of the people who say, and people look up to as, these are the best movies of the year. But so many times maybe they get it wrong or they miss a movie. So I want to go back and look at some of these movies that maybe some people don't talk about as much, and analyze them and try to figure out, are they good movies? Have they been forgotten? Why have they been forgotten maybe in some cases? As well as just sort of giving an Oscar history of that year, of that race. So if you're an Oscar fan, you can stay tuned to get a little bit more history and understand a little bit more about the general Oscars. That's how I learned about the Oscars. But then also, if you want a little bit of film analysis and sort of cultural analysis, I do that at the end too. But starting at the top, I like to go through the 5 nominees just to give you a little bit of a sense of how the race was being panned out. And my decision to choose this movie or some of the other nominees. One of them was Raging Bull, classic 1980 Scorsese movie, really great movie. Oftentimes people sort of consider this the true Best Picture winner instead of Ordinary People because of its sort of acclaimed celebration and from a very acclaimed director. So of course I didn't choose that one. The next one was The Elephant Man, David Lynch. I recently just covered David Lynch, for last month for Masters of Controlled Chaos. However, I did not talk about The Elephant Man, so this was a possibility, but I still think, it's still connected to David Lynch. That and Raging Bull are actually pretty similar movies in a lot of ways, even though they're, in some respect, on different poles. They tackle sort of a similar topic and go about it in a similar way. But it's from an acclaimed director, so I didn't want to cover it from there. Then there's Tess, which is a movie I've never heard of, but it's directed by Roman Polanski. And, there's some controversy around him. I just don't really want to dive into that deep too much because we don't have, unfortunately, as much time, so I didn't want to talk about Tess. And then really the one that maybe I should have done was Coal Miner's Daughter. This movie I really have heard of very sort of tangentially. Maybe I've heard of Ordinary People a little bit more, but I think I've only heard of Ordinary People because it won Best Picture. If Coal Miner's Daughter say won Best Picture, I may have heard more about that and less about Ordinary People. However, I wanted to cover Best Picture winner eventually on Old Oscar Countdown here Forgotten Oscar Films, because there's actually a next string because I'm working backwards. The 70s are actually in a lot of ways do pick the right movie or pick famous movies and the Best Picture because the 70s were such sort of auteur-driven kind of studio films and the 80s were more blockbusters. There was definitely a separation in the 80s. The 80s, I would say, much more we see these intimate sort of family dramas, and then the ones that weren't getting nominated were the big ones, the ones you remember, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which get nominated but didn't win, right? So that's what I sort of think of the 80s, and that's what sort of dominates sort of the studio mindset. But in the 70s, it's a very interesting time in cinema because of that aspect. So in a lot of ways, the 70s, at least in the film culture, the Best Picture winners are actually either correct, and they were the best movies of the year, or in a lot of ways were just already seen as sort of acclaimed movies. And I want to cover Best Picture winners because I think a movie like Green Book or even The Shape of Water, or these more recent ones, we understand that there's a shift. We're in a unique time for the Oscars right now because of its sort of television rights and broadcast numbers going down and things like that. However, I think that maybe The Shape of Water and could be remembered because it's from Guillermo del Toro, an already sort of acclaimed, respected filmmaker, but maybe seen as maybe not his best, but still one that he won for. Green Book's definitely a film I think people may unfairly kind of put too much pressure on it or sort of forget, put it in sort of the Drowning Miss Daisy category. However, I did want to talk about that sort of effect of the Best Picture because Ordinary People definitely got affected by this Best Picture. Because this was a year that when Ordinary People won, it was not really necessarily a surprise. He's one of a lot of the precursors and sort of a strong acting ensemble. The sort of maybe one bump in the road was Donald Sutherland not getting nominated for best lead actor, I guess. But the thing is that they sort of were all campaigning, all the men in the film, as best supporting actor, which eventually the winner, Timothy Hutton, beat out his co-star, who was also nominated, Judd Hirsch. So, you know, that's kind of an odd situation, so that can sort of be easily explained away. But in a lot of ways, at least in how the film culture and things I've read and things I've explored and being on media and film Twitter, I guess you would say, is that, you know, ordinary people a lot of times is always said in the sentence with, you know, oh, but it should have been Raging Bull, or, you know, Raging Bull was the best film that year. And I think in a lot of ways there's a phenomenon that happens, which is why I sort of attribute The Shape of Water being something that will maybe last, but Green Book will not. That's because of the director in a lot of ways is a lot of people's first in. I mean, that's why I decided to do this series. That's why I think it's a series I'm proud of, is because you can really go in and I can help you sort of deep dive and understand a director's filmography, and then you can go out and sort of go in your own separate ways and explore them yourself. And I think a lot of film fans do the same. I think they find something like they watch Taxi Driver because it's on one of the highest lists of all time, or Goodfellas, and then, wow, this is really fantastic. And then, what does this guy other have? Oh, right, Raging Bull, and then King of Comedy, and then you discover all of Martin Scorsese's amazing films. So then you sort of hold them in high regard. I saw Raging Bull a long time before I saw Ordinary People. I mean, I saw Elephant Man before I saw Ordinary People. Why? You know, it's from a director who's famous, but famous for being an actor, Robert Redford, who actually ended up winning Best Director for this, which I think maybe nowadays wouldn't be as true, because the Best Director award is not sort of a tie-in with the Best Picture, as it usually is in this period of the Oscars. A lot of times the directing awards, like the most directing, the most flashy directing, which this movie does not have any. So it might have gone to something like Raging Bull for Scorsese nowadays. However, I think that there's a sort of effect with the Best Picture winner that not only will it sort of be looked down upon almost because it won Best Picture, if it's not as good as another genre film, or a film that was still critically loved but a director people love, it'll always be put down upon it because a lot of people either haven't seen it or just love Raging Bull, for example, so much that they really want that movie to win. However, I think that the Best Picture almost unfairly in a lot of ways gets treated that way, and I think that maybe that's the reason why it didn't hold up as well. But transitioning just to my thoughts now, I mentioned before that this is not maybe the flashiest directing, and that's not that kind of movie. I can very much tell that this is an actor's or director's movie. You know, something like even A Star Is Born, which has flashy sort of cinematography and things like that, it has some other technical elements that are very well done. It's still very much a movie about performances, and this one is definitely that. This is a movie where, you know, Robert Redford has that acting experience, worked with the actors to get these amazing performances that, say, another director, another competent director, but maybe not as a director as, you know, Robert Redford is an actor, so he understands the actor's process, and therefore is able to get these certain performances. So that's a skill that he's able to bring, understanding the actors and their skill sets and bringing the best out of them. Then you also have a really solid script by Alvin Sargent, who really adapts it from the book, and really a complicated, kind of really well written. The dialogue was really sharp and poignant, and so that mixed with the sort of performances, in a lot of ways, you're not trying to do too much with the visuals. You know, we just saw with Terrence Malick. You know, he's the one that very little on sort of story and dialogue, but more on the lines of philosophical themes and emotions and visuals, and that's how he sort of interprets art, and very much trying to make an art film. But I think this film, in a lot of ways, is art, but does that through the linear sort of traditional storytelling medium, and both sort of deserve to exist. Both are different types of films, and I think most people are more comfortable, I guess you would say, and more used to the sort of traditional Hollywood narrative style, which is honestly maybe my preferred style too. That being said, I still appreciate and respect and emotionally connect to some of Terrence Malick's films. But I'm making this distinction because, you know, sometimes you go through a film and you think, you know, why isn't this visually hitting at me? Why isn't this sort of interesting in that way? Because there's almost an element that seems to be missing. But in a lot of ways, if this film was sort of flashy in its visuals, it didn't it would detract, I think, away from the performances and the writing, because this is a very sort of realistic suburban drama, which you didn't want something to be distracting or sort of over the top, like something like a Scott Pilgrim kind of a visual style. In a lot of ways, he shoots this in very unique ways, shooting through windows, which is a common technique we've seen in sort of misery-straught films like Carol, which this is very much so. It's very much a sort of sad film, and it talks about, what I really enjoyed is about the human emotion and sort of displaying your feelings, and how psychiatric therapy, going to a psychologist, can really bring that out of you, but then also you have to sort of confront things, because it's a very unique time where I think it's based off this family who, about, I think, probably, I guess it's now, I don't know, it must have been like a year, I guess it's not that clear, but it's been a long time since the death of one of the sons in the family. So there's a son, and then his brother died, and then of course the parents and their son died. So two sons, one of them died, and they're just trying to sort of push away their emotions, and they've never really tried to confront in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of sort of tension in the way the writing is, but sort of how even Redford as a director just holds on a certain scene or holds on a certain shot to let it play out maybe a little bit too long, maybe a little bit too awkward. So I think that, while this is very much a specific kind of person, this sort of upper middle class white, sort of late 70s, 80s, I think actually it's kind of an 80s movie, upper class kind of family, who the son dies in a sailboating accident. Some people have no experience of that whatsoever. However, I think that the film sort of transcends that in a lot of ways, because it focuses on different aspects. It doesn't focus that, because I'm rich or because I can get into a good school, this is my problem, which in a sense, we can explore certain themes with that, but if you start that like that, a lot of people sort of tune off right away. What I think this understands is that this is sort of just their life, this is just a family, and this is what they go through. And it's a lot of times just how we deal with those emotions. It has no relevance how he died, or how he died, in a sailboating accident. It's how the characters sort of react to it and how the characters process it. And there's even some, I think, smaller moments I think do relate on a more universal scale. It's because of course I can't speak for everyone, but things like strict parents, or sort of emotional distance, or of course, the parents of trying to find that right balance of loving but still sort of strictness. Really, in the film, at the end of the day, I thought it was very honest. I thought it was a very honest, very caring movie. And a movie I really enjoyed. And there's also little moments, calling her up on the first date, so the awkwardness of that. I do think there's some universal themes, because I think the film does a great job at going past its sort of traditional suburban kind of setting, which is very specific and not related to everyone, and going to try to understand more universal themes, which is dealing with emotion and processing grief in a lot of ways. This is a sad movie, but a movie I highly recommend. One of the best movies I think I've seen on forgotten Oscar films, and I think that's why it should be remembered. It shouldn't be remembered as the film that lost Raging Bull. It should be remembered as this complex, great family drama. But the reason why I guess it doesn't hold up, like I said, is sort of that Green Book effect. The fact that because it's associated with Raging Bull, that's not as good. I still heard a little bit about it. It still has that Robert Redford factor to it. So as you explore more of his acting career, which I'm sort of doing now, you should explore therefore more of his directing career. And he's an incredible director, incredible actor of last year's best movie, Old Man and the Gun. But I still think that he is a very unique director, and this film is a very sort of emotionally intense movie, but a very cathartic one in that. And I think it's a movie that everyone really should watch. It's a high recommend for me, and one I really enjoyed, and one I'm glad to have seen because of the series. So next week we're going to be looking at 1979. That movie is going to be All That Jazz. That should be a very fun one because, of course, that was comment recommended. So, of course, comment below. Let me know some movies. We're going backwards. Next week's All That Jazz, but then 78, and then so on and so on. A movie that maybe you've seen or you want to know a little bit more about it, or just look at the Best Picture winners list and you've never heard of this. Maybe you want me to talk about one of these. If you pick something like The Godfather for 72, I may not cover it. However, there are some other films that I think I'll definitely cover. Just comment below. I love to hear your suggestions and build a film community in the comments down below. That's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, stay tuned.